Try that again. Any better? There we go. Thanks. Could I ask everyone to please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance? Welcome again. Great to see so many people out tonight. Much appreciated, especially for the reason, one of the primary reasons we're here tonight to recognize some very special people. I think we can probably skip at the roll call. We're all here. Just let's make sure we note that on the minutes, please. I'm going to switch around the items on the agenda just a little bit. We're going to get the business portion done up front, and then we'll get into the recognition part of our meeting this evening. So with that, we'll go to item number 3, the consent agenda that was discussed on Monday evening. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items.
Thank you, Joel. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. We do need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Bingo. Thanks, Ellie. Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Andy. Then we have 3 action items. The first is Kennett Collaborative, the list of special events that they presented on Monday. I had to recuse myself because I'm a board member of Kennett Collaborative. So we had to put that onto the action agenda for this evening. So with that, is there a motion to approve the Kennett Collaborative permits for the events this year?
I move to approve the Kennett Collaborative events that go all the way through to December.
Thanks very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Council President Norris, I'd ask, there is still 6,747 remaining on the balance from the half cap. I'd ask that you just make the approval contingent on us receiving that.
Is that okay with the motion?
They're in the first.
Oh, they weren't. Okay, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I recuse myself.
The half cap was people who were here said that they would get.
It hasn't yet, so I would just ask that it be contingent on that.
The next item, number 7, is the Brandywine Red Clay Alliance Letter of Agreement and Letter of Support. Kyle, can you share that with us?
Sure. This came to us yesterday. 2 items. One is a request for a letter of support. The Brandywine Red Clay Alliance has reached out. They're trying to get a grant to improve the west branch of the Red Clay Creek. They want to do some stream restoration there. It's on our property. And so they're looking for a letter of support, as well as basically an agreement that allows them to enter our site and do the work.
Is there a motion to approve the letter of agreement and the letter of support?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Kathleen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. The next item is the appointment of Greg Norris to the Landfill Authority, the Southern Chester County Regional Refuse Authority Board. And since I'm rather close with Greg, I'll recuse myself on this one, and our vice president will take over.
Is Greg Norris here?
Yep.
Would you like to come up to the front? He's putting you on the spot. Because we didn't make Doug do this. So you want to join the SECRA, which is our what is that? Landfill, thank you.
Yep, I'd be happy to.
And do we have any questions for Greg?
Any particular reason that you're interested in the landfill?
It was an open position. And And I have a background in systems engineering and green engineering, so I thought I could do the position justice.
We thank you for stepping up because we have positions to fill in our commissions on the boards on the borough. Is there a motion to approve his joining this commission?
I will make that motion. I'm always happy to support a fellow Hokie.
We have a second.
Second.
Are we all in agreement? Or is any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against?
And I'll
Motion.
abstain.
You have one abstention. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. We will have a lot of time for public comment when we get into our workshop session around affordable housing, and hope it's a very engaging back and forth discussion with folks that are here, very much so. Prior to that, are there any public comments not related to one of the items on the agenda or related to affordable housing? If not, let's get into a very special part of our meeting tonight. We get to recognize and honor many of our unsung heroes, the people standing back there who literally strap on a gun and leave their home to protect us and to keep us safe. Our officers and also our staff. We have some fantastic depth and folks that work to keep this town as beautiful as it is. They include our leadership team, Kyle and Sonny, Rachel, our administrative team, our finance team, our public works, our zoning and codes people. And we also get to recognize that person last year who went above and beyond through a special award as well. With that, may I turn it over to the mayor and the chief to take over?
Good evening, everybody. We are looking forward to sharing these awards with you this evening. We have an incredibly dedicated police department that fulfills an important mission for the borough. And they continue to serve in challenging circumstances. As most of you know, they pushed through COVID and still today work in a challenging environment. And so it's nice that we can recognize them tonight. So the chief's going to give us some awards and some backgrounds on each of them, and we're going to take a chance to recognize them. And I think first you're going to have the chaplain to come up as well, right?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, if I could ask Chaplain Annalee Corangle to come up please, for the invocation.
The first part of my invocation is for you guys. For the ones who run into danger so that others may avoid it, stopping bloodshed, holding the broken, shielding us from it all. To the ones who meet the dark side of humanity so we can go on never knowing, you are noticed, you are prayed for, and your work is highly valued. You're our safety, our provision, our security in the darkness. Your compassion, your purpose, your blood, sweat, and fears, your courage, your sacrifice, your heartache, they are seen. You're our heroes, our champions, our protection, always near. Now would all of you pray with me, please? Gracious Creator, on this night we give thanks for all the brave officers of the Kennett Square Police Department. They protect, serve, and strengthen our community. You know that police work demands a rare combination of bravery and compassion. It's a calling from you, God, and a job worthy of great honor. We give thanks for the officers honored tonight for their skill and diligence and courage. Protect all who serve in law enforcement so they may return home at the end of each shift to those who love them best. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You are truly an incredible part of our department, Annalee, and we thank you for your service. Next, if I could ask Lieutenant Rongus to come up and help, please. If I could ask Patrolman Blackburn to come forward, please. One of our two officers is unable to attend this evening. This is going to be in our merit award for life-saving efforts. Why don't you stand right over here, Kyle? On May 16th, 2023 at approximately 22:08 hours while leaving the parking lot of the Kennett Liberty Laundromat located at 201 South Washington Street. Officer Blackburn observed an unconscious male subject lying on the ground in front of the Wawa. Officer Blackburn evaluated the patient and determined that he had agonal breathing. Officer Blackburn then cut open the patient's shirt and applied AED pads to his chest as instructed by the AED. CPR was then conducted by Corporal Parrish and Officer Blackburn. EMS took over and then provided care for the patient. For that, we thank you for your service, sir. Next, if I could have Corporal Toth, Officer Graham, and Officer Matty come forward, please. On June 14th, 2023, at 21:17 hours, Corporal Toth, Officer Matty, and Officer Graham responded to a severe car accident in the 200 block of South Union Street. The operator of a single vehicle accident had a severe health event, rendering them unconscious. Corporal Toth and Officer Matty arrived and observed the vehicle flipped on its side. Officers gained access to the patient after breaking several windows and attempted to help stabilize the patient until fire department could arrive and extricate them. Officers continued to assist with life-saving efforts as medics took over the scene. The operator was able to be transported from the scene alive, but in critical condition. For that, we thank you. If I could have Officer Blackburn and Officer Andrus come forward, please. On September 10th, 2023, at 17:47 hours, Officer Andrus and Blackburn responded to an overdose. Blackburn arrived on location, assessed the patient, and conducted a sternum rub, but the patient remained unresponsive. The patient had a light pulse at the right carotid artery, but was still breathing. EMS arrived on scene and approximately the same time began treating the patient. Officer Blackburn operated the oxygen bag while EMS personnel administered Narcan. Officer Andrus spoke with the roommates to ascertain the patient's information and probable narcotics that the patient may have ingested. We thank you for this life-saving effort. If I could have Officers Todd and Graham, please come up. On August 27, 2023, at 23:16 hours, Officers Todd and Graham were dispatched to the area of South Washington Street for a cardiac arrest. Officers arrived on location and administered Narcan to reverse a possible opioid overdose. CPR was conducted and later an AED was utilized. EMS arrived on location and took over for the patient's medical care. For that, we appreciate your life-saving efforts. I could have Officers Graham and Ortiz come forward, please. On December 22nd, 2023, at 13:54 hours, Officers Graham and Ortiz were dispatched to the area of Richards Road to assist with an EMS call. On scene, officers encountered the patient who was going through a mental health episode and crisis and had inflicted self-harm to themselves. Officers applied de-escalation tactics and medical attention, and the patient was then transported to the hospital by EMS for further medical care. We thank you for those efforts. I will move on to our merit awards for investigative efforts. If I could have Officers Ortiz, Officers Todd, Officer Boyer, and unfortunately Corporal Parrish is not here, but if those three officers could please come forward. On September 24th, 2022, officers responded to a report of a theft in progress on Marshall Street. The resident reported multiple suspects attempting to steal his vehicle from within their garage. As the resident confronted the subjects, the resident believed one of the subjects pointed a firearm at him. The suspects then fled the area, leaving an additional stolen car on location. That stolen vehicle was then processed, and as a result of the processing, latent fingerprints and additional physical evidence were gathered during the investigation. That evidence and the collaborative investigative effort then resulted in 4 suspects being charged for that incident, and we thank you for those efforts. I could have Officer Andrus and Officer Batty come forward, please. On July 2nd, 2023, officers responded to the report of a theft from a vehicle and a vehicle theft. The car involved was entered into NCIC as stolen. The stolen vehicle was then pinged in Delaware. Wilmington PD located the stolen car, which was involved in an additional auto accident. The subjects fled from the area before Wilmington PD's arrival. Officer Andrus responded to the scene of the accident and collected valuable evidence. The evidence was later processed, and due to DNA and additional physical evidence obtained, charges are currently pending for the individuals involved in this incident. We thank you for the efforts that took place in this. I'd like to just offer a sincere thank you to our police officers, our parking enforcement officers, our civilian staff. The department is an incredible team working together to serve the borough of Kennett Square. This annual award ceremony is a time to thank the department members for a well-done job. The awards we present this evening are just a glimpse into our staff's professionalism and dedication to the community. It would be impossible to acknowledge everything they do, so we just are highlighting some of the top incidents from the past year. The last award that we have this evening is actually for our 2023 Kennett Square Police Department Officer of the Year. This award recognizes one officer for excellence, dedication, determination, and commitment to the Kennett Square Police Department and the Kennett Square community for whom they serve. The Officer of the Year has a special meaning to it, as it's not only presented solely on one person's nomination or determination. The award is determined through a selection process by a collective vote of the officer's peers, supervisors, and the chief of police. This award acknowledges an officer's ability to demonstrate professionalism, understanding, and patience in sometimes challenging situations or circumstances. It's the ability to demonstrate humanity and compassion towards people while remaining dedicated to the oath of office for which they swore to uphold their duty as a police officer. This year's recipient, selected by the 2023 Kennett Square Borough Police Department Officer of the Year, is awarded this for his dedicated hard work and continuous efforts in his role to the department. Shift Supervisor for the B Squad, Corporal Christopher Parrish, who unfortunately is not here to attend this evening. He found it more important to go to Disneyland with his children. I wish I could be there with him as well. So Lieutenant Rongus will accept this on his behalf. And then additionally, I'd like to thank two critical members of this department for their continued hard work, which I assure you does not go unnoticed by me. These officers are indeed the backbone of this agency, and I applaud them for the hard work and professionalism they apply every day. That would be Lieutenant Ken Rongus and Sergeant Chris Gravina. In closing, I would just like to thank Mayor Fedek and our Borough Council for their unwavering support and dedication to the police department. Thank you for allowing us to recognize the police department members this evening. Thank you.
Steve, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think you, okay.
Come on. We had a chance before the holidays at the end of the year to give a certificate and thank the chief for his 25 years of service. However, tonight we wanted to not let the evening go by without recognizing in front of everybody Chief Holdsworth's 25 years of service to the borough of Kennett Square, and to present him with this plaque. Lieutenant.
Chief, it's been a pleasure working with you over the last 17 years. We've worked in many capacities together, but mostly you as my supervisor. I couldn't have asked for a better role model, friend, mentor to help me succeed in this tough line of work. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Helping you achieve or helping you celebrate such a great achievement as 25 years in this career, I couldn't be more honored to present this acrylic. This acrylic award on behalf of the police department. And when you say backbone of the police department, your dedication and hard work and endless day in and out, always there to answer any questions and being there really drives the success of this police department. So on behalf of the Kennett Square Police Association, myself, Mayor Fedek, and the rest of the Borough Council, just would like to say thank you.
Somebody should. How about it once again for all of our officers, our chaplain, Nikki and Tricia, our administrative folks, our Lieutenant Rongus, our Chief Holdsworth, and our own Mayor Fedek. Thank you all very, very much. Thanks, everyone. We'll take a 10-minute break just to let everyone take a picture, say hello. Mayor Fedek?
Just really quick, I wanted to thank the chief again for his 25 years and also our special guest, family members of the officers this evening that received awards. The chief's family is here. And I also want to thank our district judge, Iacocca, for coming this evening. We appreciate your attendance here this evening. And thanks, and enjoy a quick 10-minute break.
10-minute break. Thank you. Good. We'll start back up. And again, gosh, thanks for those folks. And would like to now ask Kyle if he wouldn't mind sharing what special folks we have here on our administrative side of the township, of the borough.
Sure. Thanks, Council President Norris. That was a great presentation. So, yeah, so just as background, we give out an Employee of the Year award. Similar idea. We have, just like police, we have a few people who could certainly qualify for it. So as a background, last year, the streets foreman for the borough, Steve Monk, was given the award. He took the department over as foreman last year, ran with it, and did a really good job. He continues to do a great job, right? So there's a great candidate there. Our roads leadership, Rob and Denise, took on a significant amount of new capital projects, and they're knocking out of the park. You can see it downstairs, right? We're underway on our new police station. And our finance director, Nick, did a really incredible job over the last year. He assumed the director position. He held both for about 6 months. And, coming up here, maybe earlier this week, we got an award for financial excellence for 2022. So doing a great job. This year's award goes to Sonny Greco. So Sonny started here in the fall of 2022. He came to us from Utica, New York. His family was moving for his wife's new position in Wilmington. He came to us with good experience as a chief of staff for a larger city, Utica. He's taken a communication system that we didn't have a year ago. It was a priority of our council coming out of strategic planning sessions, and we now have over 10,000 subscribers to that system. At the same time, he's helped to give structure to our strategic planning process itself. So when everyone shows up and there's food there and there's a professional consultant and you get the reports afterwards, he's doing a lot of the legwork on that. He's really helped to give structure to some of our departments by professionalizing and modernizing some of our customer service. So thank you to Sonny, and we have an award here to present to you.
Thank you, Sonny.
All right, workshop. Affordable housing. This one should be pretty easy and pretty quick, I'm sure. Ironically, at Monday night's meeting, Ken Edwards, who's here tonight, said, and I think I get it fairly accurate, Ken, I'm sure you'll correct me. You've been talking about that affordable housing forever. Either do something or stop talking about it, was more or less what I think he said, Ken. Thanks for the setup for this evening. And I agree. Stop talking and do something. There are probably more committees that I'm aware of that were formed and disbanded around affordable housing because of the lack of progress than most other topics that I'm aware of, at least. So why don't we just do something? Affordable housing is, I think everyone knows, is a critical need in our country, in our state, in our county, in our region, in Little Kennett Square. Huge needs. And we'll hear about that from Sharon Wiles of CACS. She'll tell us in just a couple of minutes how much some of our own residents desperately need affordable housing and what they're doing to try to help them. But to do it, a few things have to be decided. And it really comes down to that. Who are you trying to help? Housing difficulties come in a number of different flavors. Are you trying to help with transitional housing? Literally those folks that are sleeping on their brother or sister's couch or in a car or nowhere? Are you talking about affordable housing, capital A affordable? Typically that's defined as people or families at less than 80% of the mean area income. That's a HUD number that they give. And HUD says that the mean area income of Chester County is $94,500. So when you're talking about 80% of that, that's about $75,000, a little over $75,000. That's for affordable housing. And then there's attainable housing. Attainable housing is defined at somewhere between 80 and 125% of the mean area income. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will correct me on the exact figures. Those are lots of folks that stood in the back of the room tonight, teachers, emergency responders, even a lot of college grads, who get out of school and really can't afford to live in Kennett, even though they grew up here. So question one that I think we have to answer is, who are we trying to help, especially with very limited resources as a municipality? Question two is how do you want to help? And that assumes that you actually want to help, but how do you want to help? In Kennett Square, it's not going to come from spare revenue. As everyone saw, there have been 2 large tax hikes over the last 2 years. We have infrastructure needs, we have sewer needs, we have water needs, we have increasing costs that are way above inflation for police services, fire and EMS services, and our expenses continue to climb. So there's not a lot of extra there to try to affordable housing based on what our priorities are right now. The county has certainly some resources, and Dolores will share some of that very shortly. But the borough and hopefully surrounding towns have some resources that they can use to assist with housing, but they all come with trade-offs and decisions. Land prices in Kennett, as everyone knows, are high. The popularity of our area, the success of our area makes land very expensive, and land is one of the biggest drivers of affordability in terms of developers trying to do something. Zoning decisions are a big one. The borough can adjust zoning. We have control over that. Things like density. Do you want more houses or more apartments on a piece of land? Okay, but are you okay with more neighbors, more traffic, more congestion? Parking is another major impediment or benefit to affordability. Right now, any dwelling in Kennett Square, whether it's a 600 square foot studio apartment or it's a 5-bedroom McMansion, all require 2 parking spaces per dwelling. So if you want to build more affordable dwellings, you have to consider what you do with parking. Are we okay with fewer parking spots and having to walk another block if you want that, and more traffic because of that density? Accessory dwelling units, I think we'll probably hear about tonight, where that's basically taking 2 dwellings onto one lot. It's converting a garage, like we spoke about on Monday, to a garage and an apartment up top. Is that a good thing? There's a lot of homes in Kennett that just historically have had enough height to do that, others that can't do that, like we saw. But new ones right now that aren't within that zoning aren't allowed in terms of height restrictions and things like that. Missing middle housing. In other words, instead of living next to a single family home in those same residential areas, living next to perhaps a duplex or a triplex is called missing middle housing, instead of having just single family homes. They're doable, but they come at a cost. Are we okay with having 2 or 3 neighbors right next to us instead of a single family right next to us? Hopefully, Mary Kay, if she can make it, or someone, oh, there she is. Thanks, Mary Kay. Will talk about some of the policies that her group are trying to do to help affordable housing. Are we ready to do something? You know, as Ken said, are we ready, or do we want to just keep talking about it and stop? It's a question about in my backyard. Do we want it in our backyard, or do we not want it in our backyard? Because we're 1 mile square. That's all we have to work with. We can call on our neighbors in the surrounding towns, but we have to decide whether it starts here or not. We have some difficult decisions to make. In 22, the council sat down and said, what are our priorities? Our top priority was to try to improve the financial security of the borough. And I think we've gone a long way towards doing that. The second top priority was affordable housing that council said, that were all but 2 of the members that are here tonight. We have to answer a couple of questions. I'll ask you to hold your questions, and then I'll engage you. I'll ask you to get involved in the discussion here and at this table with the 3 folks that we have come to speak. So first off, I'd like to ask Cheryl Miles. Cheryl is literally in the trenches helping those who don't have a place to put their head down tonight. She comes from the Kennett Area Community Services, or CACS, to share with us what the group is doing and some of the challenges. Oh, is that on? Mic on? Thanks, son. Thank you.
Next slide. According to the 2022 U.S. Census, the borough of Kennett Square has a population of 5,925 people. The median income is approximately 70,000, compared to the state of 73,000. 71% of the population in the borough is active in the workforce, compared to the state's average of 62. Although the median income is 70,000, 2.4% of the borough's household are considered living below HUD guidelines of poverty and eligible for federal assistance. And 52% of the households in the borough are considered ALICE, access limit, income constrained employed. They are considered the working poor, households that are above the poverty level, but below the basic cost of living, not eligible for federal assistance. Did you know that 54% of the borough of the count of Kennett Square is living in some level of poverty? Poverty is defined as a state or condition where people or in communities cannot meet the basic standard of living because of the lack of their resources. Next slide. In 1948, adequate housing was declared a component of human right to an adequate standard of living. The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development defined affordable housing as when no more than 30% of the household income pays for gross housing costs, including utilities. In Kennett Square, the average single-family home costs $475,000. The average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is about $1,700. To put that in perspective for affordable housing, a full-time waitress making a minimum wage salary of approximately $15,000, that's about $1,200 a month, can afford rent for $370. A nursing assistant making $30,000 could afford rent comfortably at $750 a month. A web designer, 60%, a web designer making 60,000 years can afford $1,500 in rent each month. Given the average cost of housing in this area, 1 in 4 households in the borough of Kennett Square may be experiencing housing instability or homelessness due to the lack of affordable housing. According to the MIT wage calculator, a living wage for a family of 2 working adults and 2 children in Chester County is approximately $33 an hour or $139,000 a year. Next slide. Why is affordable housing hard to find? The first is that income for many workers are just too low compared to the cost of housing. Some people think that full-time workers can afford housing, but that's a myth. In some housing markets, especially here, the workers earning hourly wage of $30 or more can live comfortably in housing. The second reason is closely related to the first. For-profit developers generally don't respond to demands for housing among low-income households. It's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. The rent and the prices that many households can afford to pay are too low to cover the cost of developing and operating newly constructed housing. Some household incomes are too low to cover even the cost of maintaining and insuring existing housing. The third problem is that certain types of government regulations raises production costs and reduce the overall supply of all types of housing. For example, the limits on density restrict the number of homes that can be built in an available area, and complicated and lengthy approvals process can slow down the construction process and even cause developers to go elsewhere, making it difficult for the supply of housing to keep pace with the increase of demands and the rising housing costs throughout the entire housing market. And final, the problem is a lack of government funding. To extend availability of affordable homes, federal, state, and local governments funds a range of programs that successfully house millions of families. Unfortunately, these programs are not keeping pace with the need. Currently, only about 1 in 4 eligible households with a housing burden receive government assistance of any kind. KEX's housing initiative mission is to develop affordable, KEX's housing initiative mission is to develop an inventory of safe, well-maintained, affordable housing, provide social support to tenants, and advocate for the necessary infrastructure that is essential for the success of all persons with limited resources. We have 2 primary development activities: the acquisition and rehabilitation of properties for rental housing and the new construction of rental housing. To date, our activities are we've been designated as a community housing development organization by the Chester County Commissioners, considered a CHODO. We've acquired a donated property, single dwelling in southern Chester County. We've been able to retain affordable housing for a family of 7. We are currently vetting 2 properties to be donated by the end of 2024. And we're looking for opportunities to create new affordable housing inventory in partnership with local municipalities. What can the borough do? Well, we would suggest that you consider requiring new market value housing development to include a percentage of affordable units or developers to contribute affordable housing fund to a local affordable housing program. We also recommend or request assistance in identification and acquisition of blighted, abandoned properties and or land lots, sheriff sales, and bank closures in the community. We also recommend provide equal access to acquire, rehabilitate, and rent identified properties for affordable housing. Also to offer tax credit and incentives for individuals and or nonprofits providing rental units to low-income households. Kennett Vision is a community without poverty where everyone lives well. A stable home is the first and most important step to ending the tyranny of poverty. Once you have a safe, secured home, nutritious food, you can focus on other aspects of life to pursue a healthy quality of life. We ask the borough and our fellow residents of Kennett to help us help our neighbors live well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Cheryl, very much. And thanks very much on behalf of all of us for what CAX does. I was scrolling through the website a couple days ago. You should go on, I think it's the home page. There are hundreds and hundreds of people in the area that donate and support CAX for all the great work that you guys do. It's very impressive. Our next speaker is Mary Kay Gaver. Mary Kay is the chairperson of a recently developed group called the Southern Chester County Housing Council. Most folks know Mary Kay. She's very active in the community. She's been on United Way, Kennett Collaborative, and a number of other associations. Thanks, Mary Kay.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So sorry for the mask, but I went on a trip and came back with COVID, I think. So I'm tested negative, but just wanted to be careful. So I'm the chair of this group that was formed originally as the Kennett Area Council. There's similar organizations in Phoenixville and Westchester. They're informal groups without any authority or real structure for decision-making that is just trying to gather together people that are interested in this issue. So Eden and Radcliffe from Kennett Township and Kyle asked me and Dale Gravitt, who is the recently retired head of the Chester County Housing Authority, if we would chair the Kennett group. And we said, yes, I care deeply about affordable housing, have done that as a part of my law practice for a while. And so I was very happy to see a group coming together in our area for solutions. When we met with the group, and I think actually in response to something Kathleen said at a council meeting, maybe as much as a year ago, we decided we wanted to expand the group. So it was the region, not just Kennett area. So we have folks from Oxford all the way through to Kennett Township on our group. And it is a lot of organizations, it's a lot of individuals that are interested in this topic. And really what I view us as is an aggregator of information and a way to disseminate it so that people can share what they know, figure out where they could maybe go for a solution, to understand what other people are doing, and to try and replicate that here to come up with some solutions. This isn't a problem that's going to be solved quickly or easily. It's never actually probably going to be solved, but we can improve the situation and we can provide housing. I do think it needs to be done on a regional basis because there's only so much land in Kennett Square and Oxford and the other boroughs. So we do have the folks from New Garden, East Marlboro, Kennett Township, and Kennett Square, as well as Pauline Garcia Allen from Oxford on our group. So we are trying to expand that. The other thing we've realized is there really are no tools for municipalities and housing organizations to use. I mean, there's some funding programs, there's some other things, but there's no one that's solved the problem that we've been able, looking at Kyle, because we're both like, we can't believe somebody hasn't come up with a game plan on this, but nobody has, so maybe we'll be the first to do it. Nobody's come up with a game plan that we can follow and decide what makes sense for us to adopt. So we need to build that. Pennsylvania, I practiced law in Maryland for a really long time. Those decisions are made on a countywide basis. The Commonwealth system presents another layer of challenge because each borough, each municipality has to understand the issues and agree on how to act on them. So it's going to be a lot of work, but we're hoping that our group can help to facilitate those conversations and the collaboration. We want to be a resource to you. If you have a question about what is so-and-so doing, how is this happening, we're happy to try and go and find that and share that information. The one thing we have learned is that Oxford Borough actually did get a grant to rewrite its zoning code and its saldo, and they're doing a great job. So we're hoping that that will be a great resource. So one of the first things I would say is direct your staff to become familiar with what Oxford is doing and to keep you guys updated on it. They've talked about the community piece, the community education, so that this isn't something that is surprising the community, all of these changes. They're trying to do it with a lot of community input. They have a significant grant, so they're able to get the expertise. So our suggestion, Bob, we talked about some policies. We don't have a firm set of policies. We do agree with you, though, that parking, the 2 spaces per 1 unit, regardless of the size of the unit, is a real impediment to parking. We think that you making that decision in the context of a development and a developer puts you on the defensive because you're negotiating over a specific project. So I would suggest, and I know Kyle is working on this, having a parking study where you actually have data. How many parking spaces does a 1-bedroom unit need? Now that so many people are working from home, is senior housing need 0.8, but a house with a family needs 2. So if you could get that information and then not in the context of any project, but in the context of that data and that information, making some changes quickly to the code, that is something that would have a big impact on the number of units that can be built in town. Whether or not they'll be affordable, I can't guarantee, but it would increase the inventory of housing. I would also suggest Sunny has done an amazing job on your communication tools. I enjoy getting them. They're really well done. I would encourage you to use those to let people know that they're a priority. Just did a wonderful piece on what CAX is doing. So people now, if maybe they have a property that they want to get rid of, if it's a family property, they would like to donate it, they know that's available. So I would think about how you can use that communication tool to let people know how they can participate in the process, how they can find out information, and that this is a priority for you. I would also suggest making affordable housing a standing agenda item. So you're looking at it every month, and it'll just make it a priority and make it be something that you're looking at. Again, I said track what Oxford is doing and understand that while you don't have the ability to solve this problem, you do have the ability to create some tools that we can use and to be proactive in that. And again, not to be doing in the context of a deal or something somebody wants to do, but you can be proactive in that and recognize that you can be part of the solution and you don't have to wait for something to come to you, that you can be proactive in that. If there's a parcel of property that's owned by the borough, do you weigh that being affordable housing over income generating for the borough? That, those are concrete decisions that this council can make. One of the things I wanted to do at the beginning, and I forgot to, was I know that I have some members of the council in the audience. So if anybody here is a member of the council, if they just want to raise their hand or stand up. So it's a great group. People are coming to these calls, participating, actively being engaged and sending each other things. There's really nothing that they get from it other than feeling like we're trying to move the ball forward on the issue. So we'd love this to be just the first in many conversations we have about this issue. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay. last year I was at a function with the then chair of the Chester County Board of Commissioners. And I asked her what she saw as the Chester County's biggest challenge. Without hesitation, Commissioner Mary Moskowitz said affordable housing. It was that easy for her to decide in a moment's notice, seconds notice. Our next speaker, Dolores Culligan, who's the Director of Community Development for Chester County, has charged with solving that problem, or at least improving that problem for Chester County. Thanks, Dolores.
Welcome. I'm just going to move around, okay? 'Cause I want to be able to talk to you all out there and not see my back. So I did have a presentation, and some of you stole my thunder with some of the acronyms and some of your ideas. And you can see right here, NIMBY to YIMBY, right? NIMBY means not in my backyard, and we want to turn that to yes in my backyard. So this is a presentation I did at a state conference back in December. I also did this presentation for our planning commission. So some of you who were at the housing forum in the fall may have heard this already, but this is what we're doing. So I'm Dolores Colligan. I'm the director of the Chester County Department of Community Development. We are the housing department of the county. We receive all of the federal funds to further the development and creation of affordable housing in the county that we put out through competitive processes to all of you and developers to apply for. So in the context of that, the next slide. So Chester County House America Initiative, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development recently lauded Chester County's House America efforts to rehouse individuals experiencing homelessness by providing stable housing options and for increasing the county's affordable home options. The county's goal is to develop 1,000 affordable housing units over the next 10 years. Since becoming a House America partner in June 2022, Chester County has rehoused over 200 homeless households, and we've added to date 111 affordable housing units, with more housing initiatives and units set aside for 2023 and beyond. This past September, the Chester County Department of Community Development received the 2023 National Association for County Community and Economic Award of Excellence. Our project that we submitted was the Chester County Collaborative Seeking Housing for All, and we won in the category of Planning, Policy, and Program Management. This slide shows you what we've had presented nationally, and our two goals were rehousing and the in-housing creation. We were committed and are committed to rehouse 150 households experiencing homelessness, as I said, as of June, that we exceeded that. 200 homeless households were rehoused into stable housing. And we had committed to creating 350 new affordable rental units in the development pipeline throughout 2022. At the end of 2022, we put 111 units online. Next slide. Okay. So some of the things that we outlined in that presentation were these innovative solutions and the results captured in this slide. Some of the things that you talked about: municipal flexibility, zoning changes, mixed use development, adjusting your parking requirements, addition of public transit stops so that people can use more public transportation, municipal long-term lease for affordable housing, infrastructure for affordable housing development. The funds that the county has available, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, is a federal grant that we receive from the United States Office of Housing and Urban Development. That grant for the entire county is a $1.2 million grant. That's all we get for the entire county from the federal government. That Home Investment Partnerships Program right now in this Congress is slated to be zeroed out. So if there's anything that you could do, advocate to your federal legislators not to zero out the Home Investment Partnerships Program across the country. That is the sole source of funding that we have to build affordable housing. We were able to use in the developments here, and I'll explain what these developments are. These are currently under construction. One is already online. The other two are under construction. But we were fortunate, I guess, in a way. COVID gave us a lot of money through 3 different packages that came out of Congress. And we were able to subsidize over 4 developments over the last 4 years using our traditional funds, but maximizing that and leveraging it with the funding streams that you see listed here. And then ongoing progress, it was spoken about here, the convening of the affordable housing development groups that have been created. And on the county level, through our Chester County Partnership to End Homelessness, we've created an affordable developer collaborative that consists of all of the affordable housing developers that typically receive funding and have built affordable housing developments for the county, and some new partners that are very interested in coming into the county to develop affordable housing. So we're working with them and the Planning Commission and some of you all to identify lots of land and whatnot that these developers are anxious and want to build, but they need to find the land in the municipalities that will work with them. So affordable housing is a countywide problem, but in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I think this was just mentioned, decisions about land use, zoning, and other tools that can often be utilized to pave the way for affordable housing development are in the hands of the municipalities, not the county. In Chester County, there are 73 municipalities, all with their own rules and laws and zoning and codes, and the county can't do anything about that. So these challenges have led to actively seeking more creative solutions for affordable housing development to maximize resources and ensure that low to moderate income Chester County residents have access to safe and affordable housing. Affordable housing developments, the previous slide, if you could put that back up, please. These 3 developments shown here are under construction. This one over here to the far left is the Willows at Valley Run in Callan Township, Thorndale, right on Business 30, half a block from the train station, Thorndale train station. Phase 1, phase 2. Total build out will be 120 units, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. They're absolutely gorgeous. I've been in them. They already have about 20 units rented up, and the full construction will be done probably by the end of May. There are 120 units. They did a pre-app before they even started putting up the first building. To date, there are over 1,100 applications for these 120 units. The one in the middle is Pickney Hill Commons. Those of you that part of the Westchester Housing Group were instrumental in getting that done because they worked with the borough to lessen their parking restrictions, the density of the number of apartments that could be built here on this small piece of property. I think it's only like 5 acres on the corner of Melton Center in Westchester. It borders right up to the Melton Center, the community center. So the kids who live here have access to the community center, the basketball nets. They have all kinds of activities for this development at the Melton Center right next door. Pickney Hill Commons was developed by Catherine Evans, Church Housing Corp. And that is, again, general occupancy for families. And that is 51 units of general occupancy, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And they also have 4 townhouses there that are four bedrooms for larger families. The one over here on the end is a great example of a developer-borough relationship. The borough of Phoenixville, this land was where their old borough hall sat on. And they dedicated the land to Hankin, the Hankin Properties Group. Gave it to them free. All the infrastructure was there. Hankin didn't have to pay a dime for the land. They demolished the building and they are building Hankin Manor for seniors age 62, 51 bedroom units for seniors right in the heart of Phoenixville. Expected to break ground in 2024 is the Villas of West Whiteland in Exton, just passed the environmental review. They've just gotten their zoning and everything. They're about to break ground probably in 2 months. It's first development ever in Exton, West Whiteland Township that is affordable in Chester County. I've been with the county for 35 years. It's the first time we've ever done a development in that area of the county. That's going to be 35 units of general occupancy with 7 additional market rate apartments. So developers are mixing. It's not all affordable. You can mix in some fair market rate apartments in there. With these developments, including Pickney Hill, as you saw there, that was opened 2 summers ago now, and Red Clay Manor right here in Kennett Square Borough. That opened the same time as Willows did. Red Clay Manor was a county-funded development, 60 units of seniors for seniors 62 plus. So the Red Clay and Pickney was the 111 units that I mentioned that we put online at the end of 2022. And at that point, by the end of 2024, that number will increase to 300 with the developments, with these developments and the anticipated development in West Whiteland Township. So the county is at 30% of its goal, which began in 2022, of developing 1,000 affordable housing units in the county over the next 10 years. Finally, on this slide, we are aware that there are 4 affordable housing developers that have submitted applications to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency for low-income housing tax credits. You cannot make an affordable housing development deal work anywhere without the low-income housing tax credits. It's the bulk of the funds. Willows at Valley Run is I think it's a $30 million development. The county's stake in it is $2 million. But we get 120 units for $2 million. So the 4 housing developments that we know have submitted affordable housing developments are projected to be built in Elverson, Paoli, Westchester, and Kennett Square. If they are funded, these developments will increase the county's affordable housing stock with an additional 169 units in the coming years. Next slide, please. In 2022, the median home sale price in Chester County was $466,480. Over the last 7 years, the median rent in Chester County has increased by 35%, and the median home value has increased by 14%. These rising costs, combined with the fact that over 30% of the county is permanently preserved open space or agricultural land, have made obtaining land on which to develop affordable housing particularly challenging. As of January 1st, 2024, of the 45 housing developments who have received funding for development from the county, 4,423 people are on the waiting list for affordable rental units in Chester County. Those 45 developments report to my office quarterly on the inventory, how many units they might have vacant in each of the developments. There are no vacancies. If you go on our website and you look at the rental housing inventory, you will constantly see no vacancy going down the 5 pages of developments. That's where we get that number from, because when they give us their quarterly reports, they report the number of units that are full and they report on what their waiting lists are. When I did this presentation, I believe that the Planning Commission Housing Forum was the end of October. The number on that waiting list was 3,500. In 3 months, that waiting list grew by another 1,000 people waiting for affordable housing, as I'm explaining. The 2023 point in time count identified 436 people experiencing homelessness on any given night in Chester County. This point in time count is an 8.4% increase over the previous years, and it's a consequence of the sharp rise in housing costs. The 2024 point in time was conducted on January 24th and 25th of 2024. I do not have the sheltered count yet. Those numbers are still being vetted and reconciled. But we do know that we found 16 people sleeping outside in the wee hours of the morning of January 25th. We do the unsheltered count, begins at midnight till 4 a.m. And we have groups all over the county in the 5 regions, as we kind of split up the county when we do this, that go out and literally walk into the woods, go into parks, look under gazebos, found somebody living in a porta potty who invited them in this year. That's how we find people. That's what the unsheltered count is. It is lower than last year. We found 30-something people outside last year. So that's good. That means maybe more people were housed in the shelters, or we couldn't find them because they were really hidden. So that's what our homelessness situation looks like. I don't know which. Okay, the Starter Home Pilot Project. This is a great example on how attainable home ownership opportunities can be encouraged. The Planning Commission is really pushing this. They are helping a few municipalities that are very interested in this. It would require these items and suggestions that are on this slide. But it is a great example on how attainable home ownership opportunities can be encouraged. The Planning Commission is beginning to work with a few municipalities on zoning reviews and recommendations and possible revisions to their current zoning ordinances to allow for developments defined under the recommendations column of this slide. And as many of the ones that Bob mentioned before, ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, all that kind of stuff. But zoning has to allow for that, or else it can't be done. Next slide. So regional, local, and grassroots efforts for affordable housing. It was mentioned here. The groups that are organically created by themselves are the three that we've listed here: Phoenixville Council of Affordable Housing, Westchester Area Attainable Housing, and Mary Kate spoke about the Southern Chester County Council on Affordable Housing. Many members of our faith community have organized to provide affordable housing advocacy. I know Cheryl is very active in that. And the main objective of this effort is to recruit advocates to the cause, specifically members of faith communities, to work together to combat NIMBYism. Many of you might know Bert Rothenberger and his work. They are actually taking it on the road and have created a whole advocacy packet for this initiative. If you know Bert, talk to him, invite him to your church. It's a really great presentation that they're taking on the road to help this effort. Next slide. So we have our Chester County Partnership to End Homelessness. That comes out of my office. Rob Henry, who is shown here, is the administrator of that initiative. And through our partnership's Lived Experience Advisory Board, and this is Linny on here, who was one of our co-chairs. She is a previously homeless person who has now gotten a master's degree and affords her own home and takes care of her children. And she is instrumental on our partnership's Lived Experience Advisory Board and provides invaluable feedback on operational planning and policies. This group has been a voice and representation for those less fortunate experiencing homelessness and housing challenges each and every day. They've attended Home Matters Day in Harrisburg, advocating for affordable housing at the state level. Most recently, our co-chairs, Linny and Nancy, stood to give public comment during a conditional use zoning permit hearing in Valley Township, advocating for the needs of those who are homeless. We wanted to buy a building to create a non-congregate emergency shelter. And after 4 months of going to many, many meetings and standing before and bearing witness, we were shot down and we could not get the zoning, and the Board of Commissioners decided to walk away from it. So even the county experiences what you all are experiencing. It's not easy. The Affordable Housing Development Collaborative has been instrumental in working collaboratively with DCD and the Planning Commission to create new strategies and address barriers to the creation of affordable housing. This group continues to explore creative solutions to housing development, such as the research being done currently on how to create land banks and land trusts to identify and hold buildable land for affordable development throughout the county in the future. In closing, we pledge to continue planning and partnering with our municipalities, developers, and our state and federal governments to help those who want to live in Chester County. Make housing that is safe, affordable for more people isn't just the smart thing to do, it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Side table over here, please. What we were hoping to do now is to really just get into a discussion around the pros and cons and types and whether we do or whether we don't. I mean, this group here, myself included, has the ultimate responsibility, at least while we're in office, to decide things like zoning and density and parking and those sorts of things. And where do we spend the town's money? Obviously with input from everyone in this room and everyone in the town, hopefully, but it's our responsibility ultimately. So I'd love to take any questions. You don't have to get up, Sandy. I'll give you the microphone, but if anyone has any questions, I'd love it, from the council. Let's mix it up, kind of get involved as a community to understand what we need to be doing. Let me throw it out. Dolores, based on your experience, you know the borough a little bit. You've heard some of the thoughts we had tonight. Where does the borough start? If we want to take that first step, what do we do and what does that look like? And I'll also say before you answer that, if there's anyone on Zoom that wants to ask a question, please type it in the chat and Rachel will share it with us as well. Dolores, where do we start?
Land. I mean, the great example, what Phoenixville did, they partnered up with the developer and donated land. So like if there's those infill lots, I think Mary Kay, she mentioned that, infill lots or lots where there's, homes that are, they could be demolished and things like that. But yeah, if the borough owned a parking lot, and you're not using it, could that be a lot that's, developed into a 50-unit building that's affordable rental housing?
Okay, thank you.
I can just add into that.
Yeah.
I thought also, and I had a conversation with an apartment the complex property manager, and one of the things that she said in our conversation is, no one asked them about contributing towards affordable housing or setting aside units for affordable housing, which is something that they must have experienced throughout the different parts of the state. So I would think that if a developer is coming to the municipality to gain a permit or whatever it is that they need to do, then that should be a conversation that you have with the developer about setting aside units for affordable housing or contributing towards affordable housing for this area.
What? Yep, please go ahead, Jim. Say it again.
Sorry. What would you say is like a normal typical percentage of what should be affordable in an apartment?
As far as percentage, I would say that it would be 10% of the units. And of course, it's over a certain amount of units that are developed. As far as our costs, we're still doing some research ourselves to be able to say this. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay. We are putting, so our RFP for the bulk of funds that my department administers, the federal funds that I mentioned, the RFP for 2025, 2026 funds will be released on April 5th. So there will be a housing application there. In that housing application, we are requiring that any developer who is going to apply for affordable housing, we're requiring anywhere from 1 to 3 units because we don't know what that percentage, what that sweet spot is going to be for them. So we're doing it, we're saying 1 to 3 units, if you're funded, have to be set aside. And this is an affordable housing development for someone experiencing homelessness. Now, typically, the folks that are in low income cannot afford even sometimes an affordable rental unit without a housing choice voucher, a Section 8 voucher, or a project-based voucher on the unit. So when you're talking to developers, no matter whether they're for-profit or nonprofit developers, they are looking at the bottom line. They need to make enough money to keep that development solvent and sustainable over time. So they're very, very careful about how many of the low-end units they put in because they're not getting any rent for those. So we're starting off small by just saying, if you want affordable housing money from the county, you're going to have to set aside 1 to 3 for this population. And we're going to see how it goes.
The other thing
Something completely new. We've never done this.
And the other thing I would say to go to Dolores's point is that it's better for you to have that in the code now, the expectation now, so that if a developer's looking at a property, it can factor that in when it comes up with its purchase price and its request for financing, instead of coming to you, having that discussion as a part of that one single project. And then they have to go back and renegotiate the purchase price with the seller or figure out, some other place to save. So if a developer can go in and know, these are going to be my costs, these are the fixed things I know about developing in this area, they're able to figure all of that out. And it's my clients who are developers, if they know it, they'll figure it out and figure out if it's worth it for them. So I would just say that's why my point was, have this now so someone understands it going into the deal rather than as you're negotiating other things like density and parking. If you have all of that addressed in the code in a way that allows them some flexibility, I think you'll have more successful projects.
I fully support affordable housing. I just am curious to the council, what available open space is there in the borough aside from NVF, which is a Superfund site or was?
Kyle, are you the best person to answer that?
Sure. So that is the most obvious site. We don't own the site. That's the challenge there. We own a collection of maybe a dozen properties. None are obvious sources, but it's something we could certainly package for council to look at. So the parking garage, right? Do you want to build on top of the garage or do you want to keep it for parking? Do you have, we have a couple surface lots. Are they more valuable as affordable housing? Or, but that also creates a draw on parking, right? So it's a double there. And we have a couple sort of excess lots that are used for our drainage requirements or environmental credits. So you can certainly package that for council to look at. The main thing here is just understanding what the pros and cons of any one of those uses are. There's certainly a reason that each of those assets is held.
Thanks, Kyle. We also have a strip of land on South Street right here, which some people have considered whether that would be good for some sort of affordable housing, as well as the existing police station right now as well, whether that could be used as something like that. What else? What are the questions that you have? What are the things that you're not sure about? Jim?
So people may not know this, but source of income is not a protected class. And there was a movie in the Kennett Square Library probably about 3 or 4 months ago called Unzipped, talking about Venice, California. And in there, they talked about many low-income people who were forced to be homeless because as they looked at places that they could rent that were affordable, as soon as they said they were Section 8, they got hung up on, right? So one of the things we could do is make source of income protected class, because Section 8 doesn't hurt the landlord at all. You still get the rent. It's basically discrimination, although they don't call it discrimination. The other thing is exploring opportunities through the state. The governor in his budget address, although this has to be passed, of course, has a number of different initiatives in the hundreds of millions of dollars that can make affordable housing or parts of affordable housing better or more likely, I guess is the word. And, we talk about what the borough can do or what the township can do. And Kyle just talked about land and the scarcity of land. And for my own opinion, who would want their home to be on a brown site? Not me, for sure, right? So why would you have someone who's low income who want and say, well, that's acceptable for them, right? And there's other parts of the county, not just in Kennett, but also in the western part of the county, right? But my comment is, and I know this is a tough thing to say, but this is not a Kennett or a borough or township or a Chester County issue. This is a society issue. And I think, especially for places like Kennett, where there's not a lot of land and it's small, and we have a different sort of population socioeconomic mix, we need to look at how we can come together as either cross-county, cross-municipality, or regions to address this particular issue, because it's a society issue. It's not a Kennett issue. This is a society issue. There's only so much Kennet can do, right? And if we can't figure out how to work together as a society, then we'll never solve this problem. And I think we can, and my suggestion, which we've done with the Southern Chester County Council, is to advocate with the governor's office to say, can we use the bully pulpit of the governor's office to get people together to talk about this in an objective way and see what we can do as a society to address these particular issues, not say, well, that's a Kennet issue or that's an East Marlboro issue. It's much greater than that, and we need to start thinking about it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sandy.
I just want to thank the ladies for their presentation tonight. Thank you.
Do we want this? Do we want affordable housing? I mean, I know there's one or two of us boomers in the audience, but when you think of affordable housing, you think of projects and places that look like dumps after 10 years. Do we want that here?
Yes. I could tell you the 45 developments that we have developed are not dumps, and they're still as beautiful as they are the day that they have been built. Any one of these affordable housing developments are under a 40-year affordable housing period because of the different governmental subsidies that are in there. Not only does my department every year, at least twice a year, go out and we have to inspect, we have to go on site, we go into the units that quote we funded. So in a development such as the 120 unit development Phillips, that $2.9 million that the county invested gives us about 15 of those units that are quote ours, okay, that we inspect. And we have to ensure that the folks that are living there are still in the income range that they should be. There's income qualification requirements that have to happen every single year that the developer has to do. And we go in and we inspect. The state, the low-income housing tax credits, PHFA, goes in and inspects every year. And that goes on for the lifetime of that period of affordability for 40 years.
Dolores, you had
think
mentioned
before-
something
I
earlier
think
about,
before you move on, I
And
think
then
I
there's
just need to,
folks that go in too, so.
I kind of need to respond to your statement because everybody deserves housing wherever their income level is. So let's think about this from a human rights perspective. Let's think about providing dignity and respect to each person that is in this township, in this county, in this country, that everyone deserves housing. So I think that as a borough, maybe one of the things we need to do is demystify what affordable housing is. It's housing that people can afford. And all of the stereotypical ideas that come, I think that we have a responsibility to say no. If you look at your neighbors, if you look at the people that you work with, if you look at the people who serve you in this community, they are in need of affordable housing. I hear when you have affordable housing, there's a lot of restrictions, a lot of inspections and stuff like that. That's something that's important and needs to be done. That's not necessarily necessary either. People will take care of the home that they own if they are provided with a safe place to start with. You know, when we build housing, if we're not putting so many people in the same, like I believe in really believe in providing housing throughout the county. I don't believe in putting people in certain sections because of their income level. I think when you do that, you start redlining. And when you redline, the resources and the supports and the resources that they need are no longer there because they start to discriminate. Okay, so I just want to be very careful about when we talk about affordable housing, that we're talking about a housing that anyone in your area can afford. And that it's provided with dignity and respect. And there shouldn't be all kind of expectations or restrictions on a person being able to access housing.
thank you. One of the understandings I have, just one second, I've got a question here. One of the understandings I have is that actually we learned from the projects that having all of one level of socioeconomic folks is not successful, but the more successful are where everyone is mixed in together and kind of holds and helps each other up from what I understand. There was one question here, sir.
I'm gonna stand because I want everybody to see me. I don't want to sit here in the middle and not have folks know. My name is Myra. Myra Castillo. I am part of the Southern Chester County Housing Affordability Committee. I've lived in the area for 30 years since my family migrated from Mexico. My parents were very lucky to have been able to buy their first and only home in Avondale in 1993, only after having been in the United States, my mother for a year, my father for a number of years, my father working in the mushroom industry, my mother working for an orchard. And they were able to purchase their first home and pay it in 20 years. I am now a second generation immigrant, and I am one of those people that you would consider that cannot afford a house, regardless of the fact that I'm college educated. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree. I've lived in this country for 30 years. There are immigration laws that have prohibited for me, my husband, my family to be able to afford a home. We have a large population of undocumented immigrants working in the mushroom industry in this Kennett borough, in this Kennett area, that cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment, that are living in substandard conditions where you have upwards of 25 people, men, women, and children, living in one house. That should not be the case. There are 2 or 3 things that were mentioned today. One is affordable housing in terms of rentals. That's great. That allows people to have decent housing that they can afford to rent. There are people like me who have had a home, who sold her home. It was supposed to be my first home, so then I could sell my home and get my forever home. I have money saved aside, and I cannot afford to purchase a home in this area and buy my forever home. I want to have access to that asset building where I can have my home and build my own assets and leave something for my children, just like my parents hopefully will leave for 7 of us. Cheryl mentioned housing a family of 7. That's what we're dealing with in this area, not just families of 2 or 3. We have multiple families with multiple children, and this is the trend in this area. Jim mentioned it's not a Kennett County issue. It's a Southern Chester County issue. What is the borough doing, not just for its borough, but for its community? For those of us in Southern Chester County, not just in the Kennett Borough, what will the borough do to collaborate with other boroughs in the area so that they have these types of meetings where people are allowed to speak, just like me tonight, even if I don't live in the Kennett Borough? I'm here speaking on behalf of hundreds of thousands of people that cannot speak because they don't speak the language out of fear, because they're hiding. That's the reason why they cannot be found in bathrooms, because they are hiding, literally hiding, living in those homes and working in the mushroom homes early in the morning and going back home just to sleep. You may see them walking, you may not, because they're hiding. It is a society issue, and redlining is something that I've been reading upon. There's a whole book on it. One book talks about redlining and what happened in the 1800s and early 1900s because of racism, and now I'm seeing it as an issue of classism. When we talk about people and their dignity, we talk about that. Regardless of how much people make, if they own their home, they will take care of it because it's their home. That's what I'm asking for.
Thank you, Myra. Was there a question up here?
Yeah. Dolores, there was a bullet on your slide that said municipal long-term lease for affordable housing. I didn't quite catch what that is. Can you just explain more?
Same thing, whether it's dedicating land or giving a developer a long-term, lifeline, long lease on the land. So then you still have it,
Right.
you could charge them rent for property that they built on.
Great,
So
thanks.
That was an innovative idea that has happened around the country. That our work together with the planning commission, we put that back down.
Kyle?
Sure. So I think do you want?
No, go ahead.
All right. I think the takeaway from tonight should be, that the fact that we're having this means that there's a shared interest in doing it. And I think that the takeaway should be, what kind of action points can we do within the borough to make progress on this, understanding that no single approach is going to resolve the whole issue. So I think, I would point out a couple things that our team is doing that I think we should continue to do, and then a potential area, a next step. So there's basically kind of three areas, right, that our borough can really play in terms of this, which is the rules of the road for development. We own that process. Assets, which were talked about, what can we give, whether that's land or buildings or cash or fee waiving, and support. So we do a great job of communicating now. I want to make sure we don't forget the value in our endorsement of efforts. So as the governing body in this area, there is value in getting your support behind things. So your support for CACs recently and sharing the effort that Cheryl is doing, I think that was a great first step. That's part of that third piece, waiving the fees for CACs, which just happened tonight. It's another step. It's, with a limited budget, these are the kinds of things that we can do to get behind that effort. I would encourage us to continue to try to do those things. And we are working on a grant, trying to get a grant to review our parking requirements, which again will not solve the whole issue, but it might get us closer to requiring what parking is actually needed. So somewhere between blunt instruments of 2 parking spaces for every unit and none. The truth is somewhere in the middle there. We know that smaller units use less. We know that bigger homes have more. Let's try to hire someone to get closer to that answer, so that we're moving along this path without kind of creating the unexpected consequences that often come with the blunt approach. So,
Ken?
Yeah, I just have a general question. I don't need that, that. Okay. When you do these points and you start using the averages of the mean income in that, are you taking into are you just using the zip code? Or are you just using, or are you using the geographic boundaries of the area that you're looking at, whether it be Kennett Square, Callan, East Callan, West Callan, Pottstown?
When I talk about the median, in my department, we use the federal definition. So it comes out of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, that median household income that Bob mentioned earlier. That's the Philadelphia metropolitan area that comes from the federal government. Now, I don't know,
So
Cheryl's data points came from somewhere else, so let her explain that. Oh, yeah, we're lumped in with what's called the Philadelphia metropolitan region. Yep, it does.
And just use geographic boundaries of the specific community.
So-
Points and everything else will be entirely different.
You're right.
Because if you use our zip code, 19348, you're not just counting Kennett Square. You're counting portions in the township, East Marlboro.
So for the information,
Yep.
so for the information that I gave, because I knew that I was talking to the borough of Kennett Square, I went on the US Census tract for the borough of Kennett Square. So mine was specific because I knew who I was talking to.
Yeah, well, and also, as a housing council, we've said the number for us is that no one should have to spend more than 30% of their income on housing.
You had
That's the
mentioned,
federal definition, the 30%.
Dolores, you had mentioned earlier, one of the 4 projects that have an application in is Kennett Square. I'm guessing it's Kennett Township, probably not the
Yes,
borough.
I did look.
right?
It's Kennett Square Township. It's a development called Overlook at 5 Points at 103 West Tillendale Road. And what we know of it, they did not come to the county for any funding nor a support letter. We don't know who the developer is. but it's general occupancy and it's 46 units. I don't know the combination of those units, but
And whether that
That-
flies or not is a long way from here to there, whether it happens. Julie, you
Right.
wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Myra, your comments weren't unheard, and I understand the issues in the borough specifically as somebody who lives on South Walnut Street and predominantly is known as a Hispanic street, and all of my neighbors are Hispanic. I understand that most Hispanics live in multi-generational homes, that they are living in a lot of situations where there's a lot of groups or people living together. And it saddens my heart at the thought of people not being able to afford a home in this area, because as somebody who bought their home 8 years ago, I was making $60,000 a year at the time. It breaks my heart that somebody in, you know, like their 20s or starting out can't afford a house. So as a new borough council member, I do want you to have been talking about this, and it is top of mind for us, and it will be something that we look at because it is something that is a problem in our borough.
Good evening. My name's Ken Hutton. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Partnership of Chester County, and as such, I sit on the board for the Phoenixville Coalition. I have 2 board members on the Westchester Coalition, and I'm part of the Southern Chester County Coalition. My observation is, and when we have this discussion, we should be very careful about the terms that we use. And I've come to the conclusion, as you saw flashes tonight, that when you use the term affordable housing, that has a negative connotation. And I would urge you to talk about housing affordability. It's just a very simple switch of the words, and it has an entirely different meaning.
Thanks, Ken. Last 3 questions or comments.
Hey, good evening. My opinion is that we need to create a market-based incentive for housing affordability. So as opposed to grants and tax incentives, reducing regulation, whether that means doubling the density in every zone. So a single family house can have 2 dwellings on it. Somewhere that would allow a triplex could have 6 units. So that creates the incentive for the market to come in and create all the missing housing. And then even if they're building Class A super nice housing, everything trickles down from there. So the houses that are already in existence get a little bit cheaper, and it increases the housing stock across the borough, the county, or the country.
See, you put them on Secker and see what happens all of a sudden. Carol? Carol's on the Planning Commission.
And that's my question is, do we have access to your 3 presentations that if we could use that for the Planning Commission, we could look at that more intently. We can break it down, analyze some of it, and see how it pertains to what we have, because I think that would be a valuable asset for us. I did attend the Dolores, your presentation by Zoom back in November when Luke was on that presentation as well. Another thing that we live in an area that has, I guess, nearby we have this middle type of housing in places like Wilmington that were built in right during World War I. It goes from everything from duplexes to 8plexes right across the street from Wilmington, from the University of Delaware Wilmington campus. It's in that neighborhood, but there's also Union Park Gardens, which is all different types of housing. And from that point on, it's never been vacant. So it's a wonderful example of multifamily that is within keeping with something like Kennett Square. It would look just like Kennett Square. I just throw that out.
Thanks, Carol. Last comment, because it is getting on Luke.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I just wanted to endorse many of the recommendations by our panelists here. And those especially to invite you to pay special attention to the zoning rules. There are a lot of um, uh, things out of your control when it comes to the costs of housing. You don't control the cost of land. You don't control the costs related to stormwater requirements when you have to, build parking or whatever. But zoning is one of the few things that's under your control. And things like parking, like accessory dwelling units are kind of low hanging fruit if you look at this issue nationally, of other places that are dealing with the same problems and who have made progress in affordability. Invariably, it's because they've paid attention to relaxing zoning rules to allow some modicum of density. So I just endorse that and encourage it.
Thanks very much, Luke. I'm gonna hold those because it is getting late. And just kind of ask the council if there's any final comments before I guess I ask us a couple of questions. My question for us as a council is last year, we asked the Planning Commission to study and come back to us with recommendations and pros and cons on ADUs. That was, I think when Doug was chair, the majority of the council said, yeah, we have concerns. Are we going to blow up the number of Airbnbs that we have? And that's all we're going to do with the ADUs or not? And is that a bad thing? I don't know. But are we okay still charging the Planning Commission with going to take a look at ADUs and how they might benefit housing in Kennett Square?
I think what we also were concerned about, some of us, me specifically, is like what you said, if we change the ADU regulations, which is a height requirement, which would allow more second-story apartments to happen in town, in some areas that are very dense already, and in some streets that might not. We heard on the zoning meeting last week, streets that might not be interested in getting denser. One of the other concerns is we don't control what rents are charged for those. So how do you keep it housing affordable when there's no specifics that the borough can do as well? So that's an ongoing concern.
Certainly a question and a concern.
As the cost of living here goes up.
No question. Do we ask the Planning Commission to review ADUs and come back with recommendations to the council? Tim?
I've been doing this for 2 years. I've been on council for a little over 2 years. That's what we've talked about.
Okay.
The ADUs, do we want them? Do we not want them? Do we want congestion or are we done building? I hear both sides of it the last 2 years as to everybody has an opinion on it. It's just a matter of what do we want and then just stick with it and go with it.
I hear you. I'm not saying or I'm not suggesting we do it. I'm asking the question, should we ask the Planning Commission to come back to the council with recommendations?
I don't see a problem with it. They can bring it to us and we can talk as a group.
Sam?
And I think I'm in agreement with some of what Kathleen had said. My concern is just how do we control those costs? So I don't want the Planning Commission to go and do a ton of work to do that research if that's still going to be an issue at the end of the day.
Okay. Kathleen?
It's not that we don't want to look at it. It's just, I think it's a broader question of what does that mean for town? So I think looking at it is the yes. But understand that it's a big question that has to be considered.
Ellie?
I would say it's a yes. Outside of grant-funded housing, the main thing we as a borough council can control is the ease with which developers can produce more housing. So we control the supply in some sense, and we should look at whether or not we are controlling the supply, keeping it lower than it really should be.
Julie? Joel?
I mean, certainly more data that we have to look at, the better. So between that and doing a parking study, that's only going to help and inform any decision that we make. One of the biggest, not problems or issues that I see with the whole idea of it is, as far as my opinion, one of the single most dominant ways to lower housing cost in a town, borough, municipality is if no one wants to live there. So the biggest problem is everyone wants to live here because, some might argue that, it's a nice place to live. We're doing a quote unquote good job. At the same time, all I've heard the majority of what I've heard in my short time on council so far, anytime ADUs come up, anytime parking reduction comes up, is it's massively unpopular with everyone who lives here now. So part of my devil's advocate question is how we need to figure out how these ideas of increasing density and making affordable housing benefits the people who live here and not the people who currently don't live here. Because as council, that's who we're ultimately responsible for, is the people who live here.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, everyone. I would certainly concur with the rest of the council that charging the planning commission, those members that are here, to say, hey, go out and look at it. But there's a lot of concerns about the implications or the unintended consequences of what that could possibly do around density and neighbors and parking and that sort of thing. I think when you really get down to it, are we talking about hundreds of ADUs? I think we looked at this briefly. We're talking about tens of potential ADUs when you consider it's probably a $200,000 project to begin with. But nonetheless, we're saying to the Planning Commission, please investigate it, understand the concerns that we have, and please come back with some recommendations and use the experts that are here to help answer some of those questions that maybe we don't have that data locally. Last question is, should we consider borough land, not commit, consider for affordable housing projects for us to sponsor them? Joel?
I don't know what borough land there is. I would like to see a packet put together, as Kyle mentioned, was available before I would say what is and isn't. I would consider it, but that's dependent on what land's available, what type, where it is, and so on.
Julie?
I think we should.
Ellie?
Yeah, again, you need to see what it is.
Sure. No question. No question. Kathleen?
So little, so I think we have to see what.
Okay. Matt, I left you out. I'm sorry. Would you like to express an opinion? Okay. Sam?
I think Kyle mentioned we have like what, 10 little plots or something like
Yeah.
that. Really about what's usable.
Yeah. I mean, it's more whatever non-developed land, meaning NBF, and redevelopment land is really, it's going to affect it probably much, much more than anything else. I would also say that we should at least investigate it, Planning Commission staff. My concern is different. It's financial. It's the value of the borough's land is something that's an asset for the borough, and I want to share it with those that need it desperately. But at the same time, we have a bottom line and a financial picture, which is not the most encouraging in the world. And I know there are some developers that actually, some of them have approached us to say, hey, we can pay for that land. We just need to make sure we can do it, and we'll pay you a market price or a fair price. So maybe there's something like that. So I guess that's the second charge. Unless there's any other brief comment, Kathleen?
Well, my question would be out to the people who've been buying the land in our town, who own multiple properties, what can they do to step up and be part of this solution? Because there are several
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who own multiple properties in
Yeah.
town.
And we've spoken, some of us have spoken to some of them, but the reality is, as a developer, there has to be a financial return, right? You're a for-profit company, so you have to, sorry, I'm trying to shut this off. You have to have some incentive to be able to afford the land and get a return from that land. The way that works typically is density. More units or less setbacks or less parking. You walk over to the Red Clay Manor, drive by any day. The parking requirements for that senior community, one of the two lots is primarily empty almost every single day. Drive by it one time. Thank you for the engagement from the council, from the staff, from our local experts. It's so important to the community and to the council. It's how do we get off the dime, Ken, and stop talking about it and do something. Next month, our key topic on the Wednesday night, which is April 3rd, is Kennett Square beautification, walkability, trails, parks, sidewalks, treescapes, those sorts of things. So I hope you join us then. Is there a motion to adjourn? Excuse me? We already had public comment earlier. We did. If there's any other public comment, okay. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to keep it very short, please. Excuse me, one second.
Rick Behinsky, 403 Chestnut Street. Mayor, just wanted to follow up. Appreciate your feedback regarding the library concerns I brought up. So if I understand right, you mentioned that it sounds like you believe that right and wrong is subjective.
I'm more than interested in having a one-on-off conversation with you if you would like, but I'll be clear that I'm not interested in using my political office that my neighbors elected me to make decisions for the library. If you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation with me outside, I'm more than happy to do that. But I'm not going to use my time as an elected official to tell another body what they will or won't do.
Well, I'm just asking generally, not as far as the library.
I don't think I could be more clear.
Okay, well, I'll be willing to talk to you privately then.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir.
Is there any other public comment not related to housing affordability right now? Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Timothy. Thanks, everyone.